Welcome to the stage, four-time X Games competitor, national ski champion, and head of community at Summit, Langley McNeil.
Whew. All right, we had some flight delays. We lost some bags, but we are finally here in this moment. So thank you everyone for the patience. So, you guys, making me feel so good. Thank you. So there's no better duo to kick us off than these two. We have two-time World Cup soccer champion and Olympic gold medalist. She's a New York Times best-selling author, Time Magazine 100 Most Influential People. She even has a Presidential Medal of Freedom Award. She is a hero to millions for her courage to stand up for social justice and her fight for equal pay for women's sports. Then we have, I'm not saying her name till the end, two-time NCAA champion, four-time WNBA champion, 13-time WNBA All-Star, five-time Olympic gold medalist, huge advocate for social justice and equality. Let's give it up for Sue Bird and Megan Rapinoe.
Hi.
Yellow.
I mean, you guys, that was a lot. Should we just let you nap for the rest of the session?
Our work is done.
We made it.
Your work is done. So I didn't mention, I mean, most of you know, but these two are also an incredible couple. And somehow they managed to retire within a year of each other. So Megan this last summer, Sue the summer before, and I feel like you guys are even busier now than when you were playing sports. I was driving to Miami yesterday. Sue's on NPR. You were on Jimmy Fallon last week. I mean, Megan, you're always everywhere. So what's the day-to-day like these days?
Busy.
Yeah.
The weather gods made it a hellish 2 days.
Yeah, the travel here was a little tough.
Anybody come from New York here? Yeah, fuck that. That was terrible. No, the day-to-day is either like we're just really hanging out and have nothing to do, or we're sort of jet-setting, or yeah, we're kind of trying to figure it out. I'm trying to figure out what it is to make your own schedule. I've just been a toddler for a long time, and it was really nice.
And then she tore her Achilles at the end of her season, sadly. So she was still a toddler.
Yeah.
I had to do a lot of the caretaking. So that put our vacation on hold. We were talking about backstage. But she's up and at 'em now, so we're doing better.
Well, thank God. So, gonna get right into it. We're gonna talk about a topic we love here at Summit, longevity, human performance. So, sports world, Kelly Slater, 52, still top of his game. Diana Taurasi, 41, just signed multiple more years with the WNBA. Diana Nyad was 63 when she swam from Cuba to Florida, right? I mean, ridiculous. Tom Brady went to 43. Who knows, maybe he'll come back out of retirement and keep going. Sue, as the only WNBA athlete to win titles in 3 different decades, what were some practices and habits that we can learn from?
Oh, man. I think the thing I learned, or I took, when I think back on that experience, that I took with me was being able to adapt. A lot of times, for me, it came in the form of injuries. And so I tore my ACL. I basically had like every knee surgery you could possibly think of on this left knee, a couple hips, my nose. It's a long story. But with each injury, what I realized was there was a grieving process and letting go of what I was probably no longer going to be. And that was really hard, right? I couldn't move exactly the same. You know, as time goes, maybe you get a little slower, you know, you lose your quickness. And so with each injury, with each decade, I let myself grieve a little bit. I let myself let go of the player that I was, but then I also realized, like, wait a minute, I'm older, which means I'm more experienced, so I'm smarter, and so I can lean into these other skills. And just trying to find that balance, along with all the things I'm sure we'll talk about, taking care of your body, nutrition, yada, yada, yada. But that balance, I think, was most important for me as I went through my 20-year career.
This is a very nerdy crew, so you guys can get really granular. I'd actually love to know how you look at nutrition.
Yeah, it probably the most important thing I shifted around 35. I started taking it seriously, which is really more so, it just wasn't the thing to do. People didn't really talk about it in the same ways. It wasn't, you didn't hear about other aging athletes and what they were doing. The best way to tell the story is Brianna Stewart was a teammate of mine. And when she was 21, she was like, what would you do different if you were my age? And I was like, there's a coach I work with, we both work with, named Susan. Shout out, Susan. Whew.
Also known as Jesus.
Susan. I mean, Susan is my God. And I was like, work with Susan. And a big part of what Susan does is nutrition. So for me, it was about fueling for what I was trying to do and refueling for what I just did to my body and just staying in that cycle. And then 80-20. 80% on it. 20%, I'm eating ice cream.
Megan, what do you got for us?
Oh, gosh. For both questions? I think a little bit to what Sue said, it's just the mindset of adaptation. You constantly have to be willing and able and eager to sort of move on to the next thing. With that said, I think it's important to celebrate and live in the moment. They say you don't get these moments back, and I feel like that's twofold. That is, enjoying them, and we've both been lucky enough to be on successful teams and win championships and be successful for a long time. I think it's really important to take the time to celebrate that. Like, you work so hard and put so much focus on a singular goal, and sometimes you actually achieve it, and that's amazing. And in the same sense, like, you don't get to go back to that moment. That's not something that's able to be replicated. So I think from, even just like a sort of combination, physical, mental, emotional, you're constantly having to take what you can from what you've done and move forward in a different way. And to Sue's point, the sort of grieving of like me at 25 was very different than me at 30 and 35 and 38. So being able to do that. And then I think, from a longevity and training perspective, diet is, massive. It's like literally the fuel we put in our body. I feel like I had two sort of like life-changing moments. One was my sophomore year in high school. My freshman year, my mom would just like give us $2. I'm a twin, so I always say we. She would just like give us $2, and we would for lunch buy like a piece of pizza, a Coke, and like a Mamba's like, candy. That was my lunch, like for all day and like into basketball practice or soccer practice or whatever we was doing. Obviously, that's insane. So we sort of switched things up, and she started, feeding us like horses, which is what we were at the time. And then meeting Sue. Sue had been working with Susan for a number of years, and I was like, what? Yeah. I quickly, right when we first started dating, I was like, oh, this is great. This is like the first week we're doing whatever and, hanging out, and we're falling in love and all the things. And she let me like do like 2 or 3 orders. And then she was like, okay, I have an admission. Like, we cannot be doing this. We're not eating like this anymore. This is not what's fucking happening anymore.
Gulping down like every fried item on the Thai menu.
Like, you're going to love this.
I was like, if anyone's a Seinfeld fan, I was like doing the mutton when he was like putting it in his pocket. I was like,
yeah.
So finally I was like, enough with the noodles. It's 6 p.m.
Yeah. So I quickly grieved that part of my life and adapted into following in Sue's footsteps, which I've been doing ever since, and it has boded very well for me.
Oh my God. All right, I want to get into the clutch gene. That ability to kick it into gear when pressure is at its highest. So we actually pulled some fun clips that I want to watch before we get into it. Let's take a look.
Sue Bird back playing after breaking her nose in the second quarter of Game 4.
Sue Bird, it's only one word to describe her. It's great.
What a fourth quarter for the 11th-time All-Star Sue Bird.
Sue Bird has taken over for her Seattle team.
Sue's everything. I feel like she's the best point guard who's ever played the game.
Bird will take. You bet. She is unconscious right now.
Sue Bird is a huge reason why I play this game. Such a great player, but such a special person.
Sue Bird with ice pouring out of her veins in this fourth quarter.
You really can't speak to how hard it is to do what she's doing at the level that she's been doing it for as long as she's been doing it, and she's a legend.
Bird heaves.
she just doesn't seem to age. She just continues to get better and better, and she makes her team so great.
I mean, you obviously got the clutch gene. That clock was going to zero so many times, tie game, ball's always going to Sue Bird. So is the clutch gene something you're born with, or do you think it can be trained?
The $1 million question. I do think there are elements that you are born with. I do. I think I've been around enough athletes where you can see it, even if it hasn't been groomed yet, or they haven't fed it. You can just kind of see who wants that moment and who's a little scared of that moment. I think that is a big part of it. But I do think that almost like if you have a seed inside of you, I do think you can also water that seed in some people, but the seed has to be there.
So do you see it in people's eyes when you have the ball, like not passing to that person?
Pretty much.
They're not looking at you either.
Right,
they're like, don't look at me. Somebody else is open.
Yeah. No, you can tell. You can tell in those moments. Recently, I kind of came to this. I described it as when you watch a player who is traditionally clutch, in my sport, when they have the ball and they're dribbling, there's a determination to them. It doesn't mean they're going to make it. Like, clutch doesn't mean you always make it. There's a determination versus someone when they have it and they're like a little like, you can see it in their eyes, like, oh shit. It's a little more of like uncertainty, and it's subtle, but it's a difference.
So if we did want to train it, like, would you recreate those stressful moments and, have everyone cheering while you're trying to hit three-pointers? Like, how would you train that?
Yeah, I think you have to have a lot of competition in your workouts. I think you have to have a lot of randomness, because I think what makes clutch people separate themselves, maybe within that 1% of clutch, is the ability to adapt to the randomness. Because every single one of those shots, that was one game, by the way, I just want to point that out.
Tell them.
In a span of 6 minutes. None of that was like a set play or a drawn up play. I mean, it starts out that way, fingers crossed, but like very rarely does it finish the way you drew it up. So you have to be able to read the defense, kind of take all the input in front of you in and just go. Some of that comes from preparation, which kind of circles back to your workouts, making sure they're competitive and that they have some randomness in them.
The ability to prepare for the spontaneity. Yeah. All right, Megan. Let's take a look at Megan.
I work too hard too long and not be in the conversation. My team been up, way up, ain't nothing less than domination. I got the game to say when I can keep.
Nice move by Rapinoe, then a shot. What a goal by Rapinoe!
Sleeping on me, tell them night night. It's my time in a bright light. No I'm a band, no mind, keep it pushing. Don't even know the sound.
Golazo!
Motivation, all the hating that they doing. Motivation, staying winning, nothing less. Ain't no consolation. Used to tell me that I couldn't. That's my motivation. Yeah, my motivation. Motivation. Magnificent goal by Megan Rapinoe. People talking, but you not up in the conversation. They all wanting me to stop. That's my motivation. Yeah, my motivation. Yeah, that time that I came through when I got one for the boy. Hey, now I'm finna ball out, step back, shoot for the score. Hey, if I had a penny for everyone doubted me, I'll make $1 million a month.
Advances national goal for the U.S. Megan Rapinoe's on the board. It's 4-0.
I remember being told.
That's what I'm talking about.
Into the near post. Oh, it's in! The corner has gone in.
Telling me it is a breeze. As you can see, I do it with ease. Wanna make it then believe. That time that I came through and I got one for the boy. Hey, now I'm finna ball out, step back, shoot for the score. Hey, one time for the one time, off rebound, I reground. In the meantime, I stack up, this win my reward. Motivation, all the hating that they doing. Motivation, staying winning, nothing less.
Megan Rapinoe will be appearing in her 200th game against her. Rapinoe sending one in, it's headed!
All this money on my mind, that's my motivation. You be talking, but you not up in the conversation. They all wanting me to stop, that's my motivation.
I mean, you're so much fun to watch. And I've heard you refer to yourself as an entertainer as much as an athlete. Can you say more on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think my motivation a lot of time is a sort of risk-reward analysis, but for me, it's like the reward of glory and like doing it right and getting to celebrate and scoring a goal always outweighs. I mean, if I try it and I miss, I'm like, I missed. I tried it. I don't, I think I've always kind of taken that approach. I've been given a lot of freedom as well to do that, and I think even when I was younger, I had coaches who did that for me, who were always encouraging me to try things and be creative, and it's not always going to work. But to, I think that creativity and that willingness was fostered when I was younger. And then I think as I got older, I sort of narrowed it in. You can't try everything all the time, as much as I would like to. But I think I, sort of learned where to do that and learned a little bit of discipline around that. It made it much more impactful when it did come off.
Right on. Well, it gets us right into resilience. Everyone here at Summit can relate to this. Being an entrepreneur is so hard. Being an artist, being a nonprofit leader, you have to be almost irrationally resilient, right? To get up every day with these really hard visions, right? Your funding falls through. You have a thing with your co-founder. Supply chain breaks down. I mean, we have seen it all, right? So in sports, you have to be equally as gritty. Megan, you had a tough moment last summer at the World Cup. You missed a penalty kick. And what I loved you said after is, even though you'll miss shots at times, you would always choose yourself to take that PK. You love the pressure, and you gotta, dig deep. So how do we, in these really hard moments, find the resilience to step up?
I think this is especially true for athletes, and it's in our face all the time, but just getting really comfortable and familiar and friendly with failure. That's where we learn. And I think for us, we're constantly missing shots or, missing goals or making mistakes or trying something that doesn't quite work out, but you learn something from every time, I think. And like sometimes stuff just happens. There's like life that that happens as well. But I think trying to really like integrate the failure, not as like, oh, I didn't do, good enough or whatever, but like just, okay, that's what happened, and I'll take what I can and move forward. It's just part of that. It's like we all know we're never going to be perfect, but we judge ourselves like that, or we hold ourselves to that standard. So it's sort of self-sabotage. So I never wanted to do that. I feel like I never did that. I know that's not, as easy said as done, but being able to have space for learning and growth and figuring things out. A lot of times you have to, mess up a bunch of times to figure something out or get to the result that you want.
All right, I want to talk about mindset, mental training. I had my own experience with this. I had a horrible crash on the World Cup. I think I broke 8 ribs and had a minor concussion. And then a week later, we lost a really good friend to a ski accident. And I remember just feeling so shook by the whole thing. And I wasn't sure I wanted to ski anymore. And every time I got in the starting gate, I would have these breakdowns. And so the U.S. ski team headquarters is this incredible $18 million facility in Park City. And the first floor is all your weight racks, your squat racks, your recovery rooms. And on the third floor, there's this little tiny room called the sports psychology department. And I was like, oh, thank God, I found this. So it was the first time I learned about breath work and meditation and positive self-talk. And it was honestly the only thing that got me back out there, got me excited. And then a few months later, I was able to win the national title, but only because Thanks, guys. But so it was, these very physical sports. I think, just recently people are talking about the mental game, the mindset. So I'm always really curious what other athletes are doing. Sue, what was your approach to the mental game?
Yeah, to your point, it really didn't get talked about until much later in my career. I have a really busy brain. It's kind of, at times it can be an issue, but it's also a little bit of a superpower in terms of the position that I played as a point guard, being able to help manage a team alongside of a coach. So, with every pro, there's a con. It's like the yin yang, but the busyness can get me like whipped up too. I can overthink, I can think too much. So it's really important for me to quiet that down So the way I look at that yin and yang is the busy part that's good, I need to feed it. And that for me came in the form, two forms. I'll circle back on the second one after though. Came in the form of preparation. Like I can hold a lot of information. So the more film I watched, the more I understood our opponent, the more I understood our team, my teammates, the better I could go out there and actually not think. It's almost counterintuitive, but the more I had in that bank, I knew when I needed to pull it, I'd be able to go get it. But the other side was the quieting. And probably my last 1, 2, 3, 4, like through 2, 3, 4 years, I did start to meditate. It was the Headspace app. We're talking 10 minutes. I couldn't really go beyond that. It was tough for me, but that 10 minutes, I felt like I was wiping my slate clean. It really just quieted me down. Sometimes, you'd be like, where'd you go? I was like, just took a $5 back there. Like sometimes you just need a couple minutes, for me personally, like I said, to quiet it down. So that balance was really important. And then circling back on what I was gonna add to the busy brain part, for me, part of that busyness, again, was giving myself a lot of information. The more that I poured into my teammates, the calmer I felt. The more that I was helping them perform, the calmer I felt. The more success they had, I felt like I was a part of that success, but also it brought me down. It made me feel like, So when things are going well, it's almost a point guard, for me personally, I play it the way like a producer does when they're creating. I like things to make sense. I like it to fit. I like it to flow. I like everyone to feel good. And the more I was able to do that, again, by pouring into my teammates, like I said, the calmer, the quieter that my mind got, and the better that I played. So somewhere in that little recipe is how I approached it.
Megan, what about you?
Basically the exact opposite of Sue. Sue's brain's like a supercomputer, and I'm like an Atari 1 or something. It's just like, I know what I'm doing, and I'm good at it.
You're like goal.
Yeah, goal. Risk. Yeah, I mean, to Sue's sort of, busier mind, I'm kind of a dissociator, or at least I very much was for a long time. And definitely in my career, I felt like I could sort of like block things out. I didn't want to watch a lot of film. I didn't want to study a lot. It was a lot of like, sort of like feeling based. And I think later in my career and just in my life in general, just learning how to like take the time to sort of like survey more and to input more information and to listen to people more, sort of value the conversation around the thing that we're talking about a little bit more. And I think honestly the equal pay fight was kind of a real light bulb moment for me, because we were taking this team that sort of had this very established, structure inside the lines in terms of who was starting and who was a star and who did this and who did that, and trying to take that into a very different realm and sort of deciding like, okay, actually this is what you're good at, so that's what you're going to do. And it was different than, it's like a lot of our leaders internally in that fight were not the people who were in front of the camera. It was not who you might have expected, and we were taking a lot of orders from them and taking a lot of our cues from them. So just like understanding how to be in a different role and to see myself differently, but to see other people as well. I think that takes a little bit of a slowing down and of a level of attention and care, and I'm trying to continue to learn how to do that because I like to move fast, which doesn't always bode well for me, as Sue knows. I know, we're complementary. Yeah. I'm very complimented by Sue. But yeah, I think that it's sort of a balance too, because I think my ability to kind of shut everything off was something that enabled me to be really successful and to drown out a lot of the noise that was happening, definitely at particular times. Like shit was crazy sometimes. I'm like, this is just insane. This can't even be real. And be able to laugh about it and kind of shrug it off and find a space within sort of the chaos that felt a little bit calmer, I think was helpful. And then I think, as always, when you get to play in a team sport, that's the most amazing part about being a professional athlete, is the locker room and the bus rides. And there's like 20 to 25 people. I mean, you guys have smaller rosters. There's such a small amount of people who actually know what you're going through at that particular time. And these are the only people in the world that are going through that. So whether you're, best friends forever or not at all, or friends or not, you have this shared, space and intimacy that I think pouring into and really leaning into is vital if you want to be successful.
Can I add one thing?
Please.
For both of us, I'm going to speak. I think a big part of it is really being kind to yourself. That I cannot stress that enough. It's something that one of my assistant coaches throughout my career helped me with. So that was literally during games, I'd be like, wow, you're being so mean. Why are you being so rude
that
to
internal
yourself?
voice is crazy.
Yeah, so that's something. And then we both started going to therapy recently. And I'm like, where was this 25, 35, 45 years ago? Can't recommend that enough either.
All right, I do want to get into equal pay, piggybacking off that. So most people are probably pretty aware with it, but so March 8th, 2019, the U.S. women's soccer team files a gender discrimination lawsuit against U.S. soccer. So at this time, you guys were paid roughly, 40% of what the U.S. men's team was making. And for comparison's sake, the U.S. men had not made it past a quarterfinals in modern-day World Cup and were ranked 22 in the world, where the women's soccer team at this point had won 3 World Cups and was ranked number 1 in the world. Crazy, right? Well, people might have said, well, the viewership wasn't there. But in 2015, 4 years before this lawsuit was even filed, the U.S. Women's World Cup final was the most watched soccer match in American history, had more views than the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup, right? So not that you had anything more to prove. It had been proven, but winning always helps, right? 2019, they win another World Cup to make it 4 wins. So only fitting, 2022, the verdict comes in, you're awarded a $24 million settlement in the agreement to pay men and women equally moving forward. So Megan, as the undeniable face of equal pay, what comes along with that?
I'm the face because I didn't want to read the briefs. Other people were reading the briefs and telling me what to say. I just want to make that clear. Sorry, what was the question again? My scatterbrain.
I mean, just the fight, and also it was complex trying to understand where we are with it all. So I'd love just to hear your take. Were you happy with that settlement? Where do we need to go? And also you took a lot of heat. You were out there every day doing the good fight. So what was that like?
Mm-hmm. I mean, as always with settlements, every side has to hurt a little bit. So, I always say somebody still owes me money. I know that. But I think what we were able to do moving forward was, just program changing, and I think, world changing in a lot of ways, especially for those players who are now on the team and for the league. And I think just a part of this incredible landscape that's happening right now and has been happening for, a while in women's sports, but particularly these last, 6, 7, 8 years have been sensational. And we're seeing it all, happen again with the NCAA tournament and just the way the women are absolutely bodying every single aspect of it, from star power to TV ratings to whatever, all the other things. Everything's just way more exciting over here. It was a complex fight, sort of. I mean, there's some intricacies that are, very specific to us. U.S. Soccer is a national governing body, so, the necessity for equal pay was part of that. I think that was such a crux of our argument, and I think they wanted to bring in the famous line, the sort of market realities of things. It was a little difficult with the men's team at times, and I was like, you guys, we're the labor force. Both of us. There's no us and you and them. It's them and us. So the more we can, stick together and understand that, till we're all free, none of us are free. And in the end, they, sort of came on board, but they were very reluctant. And I think a lot of the narrative around that was that, they're not good and we are good in a very blunt sense, which I never really liked, because I was always like, we're the labor force. Like, this is an equal pay, a sort of EEOC claim at its heart. Like, whatever, we're asking for, like, you're going to be getting it too. So that was a little complex. I think the length of time that it took. Originally, we had filed an EEOC claim, which is like through the government, and it was cruising and going good. And then, 2016 happened, and the administration changed, and I swear to God, Trump threw that shit in the garbage himself. Like, that, it just stopped. It just, like, all of a sudden, it was going really well, and then it was like we never heard from the EEOC again. So that led to filing a lawsuit. That took a lot of time. I think my sort of naivete around the legal system and the actual process was probably a good thing for me, because apparently we took some L's, but I didn't really know. I was like, I don't know, we'll just go on to the next step. I think that's the sort of failure mindset of an athlete. It was like, okay, Judge, I think his name is Judge Klausner in California, delivered what I think was a pretty significant blow to us, but there was another step. There was an appeals process, and we were still in it. So I think we always just kept together. I think at the heart of it, we just knew. We knew that we were right, and we knew we were on the right side of things, and we knew that there was really no opportunity for them to win. It was either like, we're going to get this done, or we're going to stop playing at some point. So I think they always knew that too, although they wasted a lot of money, tens of millions on the way there. But I think we sort of just always knew that eventually this was going to be something that was happening. And I think even just the perspective and ability for us to take a step back and think, like, look at the world. Like, this is, 2016, 17, 18, 19. There's so many things that we can point to that were real, like, progress moments, whether that was like racial justice or, the Me Too movement or trans rights or women in sports or gay rights. There was a lot of things, the sort of snowball was gaining momentum, and we just never lost faith, and we had an incredible group of players. Like, I just can't overstate enough the determination and the resilience and the intelligence and the load that this generation of players, from Becky Sauerbund to Kristen Press and Tobin Heath and myself and Kelly and Alex and Carly and Sam Mewis and so many other people who just wouldn't let it die. Like, some of us had to take some breaks at times and, just tap out for a little bit, but never all of us at once. We just never let it die. And honestly, when fighting for equality, that's what it is. It's constantly an uphill battle. The sort of tide is always flowing against you, and you just have to collectively stay together. And we took a lot of, inspiration and sort of fuel and power from a lot of other places. Obviously, we were dating at the time, not the exact same thing that you guys were going through, but similar, of just being able to say what you want is your worth, and be able to say that you want that. And, a lot of other movements at the time, I felt like we were part of something much bigger. We definitely were one of the ones that got more attention. I think U.S. Women's National Team traditionally is white and straight and very palatable for, most of America, and certainly for the media. And I think we got a lot of attention for that, and hopefully we did a good job with, turning that attention back on so many other people, Black women, of course, from the WNBA, other gay people, Me Too movement, who didn't have the spotlight that we did. I feel like we were all sort of in that together, so it was a combination of all of that.
Yeah. And the ripple effect has been, massive. I read your own aunt actually went to her own job and asked for a raise. Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. So I was like, go on, Wendy. We don't agree on a lot, but we did on that. Yeah. I'm not gonna get into my whole family. Love them.
We
love
stay away
them.
from that. All right, so we're in a huge moment for women's sports. I mean, it's always been a big moment for women's sports, but it's finally getting the buzz and the attention it deserves. You know, history was just made in Kansas City a few weeks ago. The first ever stadium was built for a women's sports team. Finally, yeah. You know, Lindsey Vonn, Michaela Schifrin in skiing, the Williams sisters in tennis. I mean, Caitlin Clark, prime example. People are paying thousands of dollars to go watch her play. 4 million people tuned in to watch her break the 3-point scoring record in a season. I mean, there's so much buzz around March Madness right now. Sue, can you just paint the current landscape of what's going on in women's sports and the future of women's sports as a business?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I just feel like society finally caught up. It's pretty much how I see it. All the things that, when you really start to deep dive, and if I put the basketball lens on for a second, when you really start to deep dive, let's use viewership numbers, right? So Caitlin Clark is certainly taking the sports world and the world in general by storm. And in the Elite Eight game, they got 12 million viewers, which broke all kinds of records. You mentioned earlier things like Stanley Cup and NBA Finals. This game blew that out of the water. And then you start doing these deep dives. And because this weekend we're going to the Final Four, so I might be on TV talking about some things, so I gotta get my studying going. And you start to learn that when Cheryl Miller, who's one of the all-time greats, played in college, that game was actually on network television. I wanna say CBS, don't quote me, I'm still studying. And that game drew 11 million viewers. And you're like, wait a minute, we're talking mid-80s. We had 11 million viewers in the mid-80s? Like, what could have happened that we're just now getting back to those numbers? And you're like, oh, all the oppression. Oh,
racism.
Racism, homophobia, like all the things. These impact women's sports directly. And I think now we're just at a time for so many reasons. Obviously, Megan and her teammates, huge reason. A bunch of the names that we've already stated. You know, I think of Sedona Prince, who was just a college kid who on her TikTok showed the discrepancies between what the NCAA provided for the men's tournament when they were in their bubble tournament season in 2021 versus the women's. And all of these different Me Too movement, all of these different things are finally, I guess, colliding in a way where people are being held accountable in a different way, albeit we still have a long way to go. And so that has allowed the way people interact with women's sports to change because we're on TV more. We're getting talked about more. You know, things have changed in that regard. And I've always said it, there's diehard fans that love women's sports, always have, always will. And then there's people that don't like it, and that's okay. And I always say, I don't love hockey. I don't love baseball. That's okay. To each their own. But there's this casual fan that women's sports has been missing out on, and it's all these things I'm talking about, and that is finally changing. We're finally turning a corner. We have the momentum. People are paying attention. And I got to give it to Caitlin Clark specifically. The way she plays is truly captivating. There have been many great players before her, starting with Cheryl Miller, and I could rattle off literally 20, 30 names. And that's not to take away from Caitlin. She is coming at a time where the platform has been set up for somebody to take it, and she's taking it. And a lot goes into that. That's not easy. But there's been so many great players, and I think that's what's changing. So to me, the future is bright. We're finally on the track, and people finally caught up.
Yeah, I knew it was a big moment. We were sitting backstage with Mickey Drexler, who's coming on next, who's going to be amazing. He built J. Crew, and he's like, oh, Sue, you play basketball? Tell me about this Caitlin Clark girl. Like, oh, we've arrived, finally. Mickey knows about Caitlin Clark. All right, so you were both captains of your team. Founders here, business leaders, we love thinking about team dynamics, team culture. So Megan, something that you said that I loved is the more people can be individuals, the more they can bring their full selves to the job, the more they'll give to the team, the more they can provide to the team, the better the team's gonna be. How do we create these environments for our teams so people can bring their full selves?
I mean, I think the thing about being a leader or a captain or, the sort of figurehead of things is like your job is to make it easier for everyone else to do their job. And you obviously have a special talent or quality that allows you to do that and do it for other people. So I think that's kind of the main thing. It is a selfless job. Like, your job is to do as much as you can behind the scenes so that they don't even know, so they don't even have to think about it. And I think that goes hand in hand with what you were just saying. It's very important for me to always express myself. It has been since I was little. I think it's a vital part of being a human being in the world and of our own happiness. We all want to be seen and understood and accepted and celebrated for being who we are. We all know individually that there's no one else like us. I'm a twin, and I feel that so deeply, even though I'm a twin, and we are very different. But I feel like when people feel valued and they understand that they're, on the field or in the room or on the court for more than just what you can bring to the business or to the sport or to this particular game, they feel more invested. They feel cared for. You feel valued in a different way. I think also, and I'll sort of tie this to what's really sad, around sort of the DEI or the anti-DEI movement. The point is not to have, just these checkbox in the room. The point is to bring different perspectives. So if I was running a business and all I had around the table was a bunch of me's, like, that shit would be crazy. That'd be terrible. We can all imagine. It would be a lot of risk. And it doesn't work, but when you have different people around the table, when you have people who are bringing a different perspective, when you have people bringing their full selves, they have something that nobody else has. And so in sports, obviously, you have to work for the team. And, I played a sport where, 11 people were on the field at the same time, and it takes a high level of intimacy and coordination and trust. But at the end of the day, the ball is at one person's feet at a time, and they have to feel empowered. And I just always have felt for my whole career, and I've seen sort of different iterations of it, good ones and bad ones, and I just always felt when people were able to, be who they are on and off the field, you get a better version of them in the thing that you're trying to do. At the end of the day, we're trying to win games and win championships and all that. So you get a better version of them, and you get generally a more enjoyable experience. Of course, the wins and the losses are important, but you don't always get to win every game, and you're spending all of your time virtually. You're away from your family, you're away from your friends, you're away from your partners, you're dedicating your life to this thing. Like, it might as well, be enjoyable and be a space where you can grow as a human being as well.
I love that. All right, Sue, the Wall Street Journal once wrote the following: "The most successful team captain in professional sports anywhere on earth is Sue Bird. To understand why, it helps to study her nose. Or more specifically, why it keeps getting broken." Can you say more on that? A peculiar quote, I had to ask.
Probably because I'm putting it everywhere. It's constantly
She's short,
everywhere.
that's why.
Yeah, no, I think the physical answer is I'm a bad height. Everyone else, I'm 5'9", everyone else around me is 6'5", so these are constantly in my face. I want to say what he's really saying is, I have my fingerprints and I have my little fingers in all my teammates' cookie jars. Does that sound weird? I'm basically all over the place. And that's actually something that I learned from my college coach. I went to the University of Connecticut. Coach Ariyama is a legend. That's right. Big game tomorrow. And one thing he always saw in me and tried to help me see in myself was this ability to be a connector, this ability to connect with people individually and then as groups and making that work. And that really, as I mentioned my superpower earlier, it's part of it. And I think that's what he's getting at. I have relationships with all of my teammates, and I know how to make it fit. And the way I view it as relationship equity, I'm just depositing in that bank all the time, truth be told, so I can yell at them later and they know it's coming from a good place. joking, but not really. Sometimes you have to have hard conversations with teammates, and the only way they're going to be receptive is if you have built that relationship, and like I said, built that relationship equity. So I think that's what he's saying.
I mean, you're the point guard. You're facilitating everything happening out there, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So incredible people are in this room that love to collaborate and help. Can you talk to us about what you're doing now and how the Summit community can support you?
Want me to start? We're trying to take over the world. Who's in? Yeah, Pinky in the brain. Yeah. At least we have a brain. I think for both of us, to your point that you just made, I think our fingerprints have been on a lot throughout our careers. Both from a very tactical, in the locker room type way to, what narratives are out there. And I think we would like to continue to be that. Sort of the architects, whether that's out front or behind the scenes. I think for us, we just believe so deeply in what's happening in women's sports and the power for sports in general, but certainly women's sports to change the world. There's every single intersection that you can imagine in women's sports at all times, and therefore we're sort of taking care of everyone at the same time. We have a production company that we started. It was sort of born out of pandemic craziness called A Touch More.
Where'd that name come from?
Go ahead.
Everybody gained a little bit in the pandemic, and she asked me in the beginning, and she's like, how do I look? I'm like, I don't know, there's like a touch more. But yeah, it didn't go over well. Didn't go over well. It's like, wrong answer immediately. It's okay, she shaped right back up. So we have that we're starting back up. The sort of base goal really is to tell revolutionary stories and to tell stories that get left behind or, purposely excluded. We have a couple of individual projects, but for the most part, we are at an age where our story has been told and told and told again. And that's not really our focus. We can, use the sort of power that we have to shine that light on others and on other areas. So we have that going. Sue obviously is one of the founders of Together and a founding member of Deep Blue, which is kind of a media buying, media firm agency. It's actually amazing. I don't totally understand it, but you do. And I'm like, yes, get it, girl. And then just continuing to figure our way through retirement. We've had, at least for me, you're a little bit more structured in it, but at least for me, it's been just so weird, to be honest. It's like, it's really good. I'm really enjoying it. I'm so happy to be retired, but I was on the strictest of schedules for, 3 decades basically. And now, sort of figuring everything out and being the biggest fan of women's sports that we possibly can be, and also just enjoying time in our life. This is the first time in our relationship that we're not ships in the night and traveling all over and playing and have that singular focus. So coming back to each other in a lot of ways as well.
I think what's really cool about where we are and where women's sports is we've definitely left our mark as players. On the field, on the court, off it as well, obviously, but as players. And now we have a chance to do it as former players, and we can really create a blueprint for younger generations of athletes to see, what types of business people you can be, that if you are passionate about things after your sport, there's ways to continue to dive into that. So I don't know, in some ways we set a blueprint as players, and it's really exciting that we get to do it as former players as well.
After my ski career, I found Summit. These people are way crazier than any X Games athletes. So 2024 Olympics, right around the corner. They're in Paris. And Sue, I know at the end of your 2021 season, when you were thinking about retiring, the whole audience started cheering, one more year. So what do we got to do to get you to starting lineup, Team USA this summer?
I'm like, I need a new knee. I need a new knee.
Yeah. I'm like,
We'll be there. Just not how you think.
Yeah, we'll be there.
We'll be there cheering them on.
Yeah, that would, yeah. I don't think there's anything that can pull us out of retirement. This shit is nice. Retirement is nice. People are like, how is it? Do you miss it? I'm like, what? Miss it? No. On Sundays.
I miss the playoffs.
The game.
I miss the playoffs.
The game. That's it. Every other day of the week, I'm like, oh, this is great.
You can have those Thai noodles, right?
There you go.
Well, this was so much fun. I see why you two are heroes to millions of people. Can we give it up for Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird?